Welcome to Vouch, the show that knows the difference between nostalgia bait and a love letter. Now before we begin, let's take attendance. Who here wanted to make a video game inspired by the low-poly N64 era?
Pick me, oh I do, that's me.
Right. Now sit down if you wanted to make a 3D platformer collect-a-thon. You there, way in the back. What game are you inspired by? Ocarina of Time. Well, let's see how you did. Ocarina of Time is one of my all-time favorite games for the same reason as everyone else. I'm blinded by nostalgia. Was it revolutionary for its era? Yes. Does it still hold up today? Yeah. Does it have one of the greatest soundtracks ever composed? Yes. Is it arguably one of the greatest entries in arguably one of the greatest franchises ever created? Yes. I could go on dick-riding this game. But the point is, do I like it for any of those very valid reasons? No. It's just because I played it at a very pivotal moment in my life. I was a kid. I was just venturing into the world of video games, into the world of games that aren't necessarily parent-approved. I actually had to lobby actively to play Legend of Zelda because there were goddesses in it, and that was a no-go. As you might notice, I'm a filthy zoomer, so I didn't play this on the N64. Instead, I found the marketing page, a website for Ocarina of Time 3D that had little informational blurbs about each of the characters and their backstories, and the website would loop the soundtrack over and over and over, and I had some sort of autistic obsession with letting that play endlessly. But I was poor. I couldn't afford a 3DS. Hell, I didn't get a Game Boy Advance until I was like 16, but I could afford the $10 copy of Ocarina of Time on my Wii's Virtual Console. And so I played, and I played that game endlessly. I never beat it. I soft-locked myself in the water temple by using a key on the wrong door, but I still love the game. I say all of this in a video that is not about Ocarina of Time to explain a simple concept that I think is important to keep in mind with these sorts of games. Zelda was developed with the intention of recapturing the feeling of going on adventures as a kid. Games inspired by Zelda are not trying to recapture that feeling. They're trying to recapture the feeling of playing Zelda. It feels different, but it feels good if it's done right. And Benighted does it really, really right. I don't want to oversell this game, but I really enjoyed it. It doesn't let its inspiration restrict it to feeling clunky and out of date. It doesn't copy Ocarina of Time's ideas, it just recognizes the purpose those ideas served and fills the same gaps. Sometimes with new things, sometimes with old things. It doesn't needlessly reinvent the sword or the bomb, but its setting, its story, its execution, they all feel very original. The premise of the game could stand on its own. If this wasn't low poly and the gameplay was different, you wouldn't think the story of a bee getting knocked from its hive and exploring an anthill is an Ocarina of Time clone. But once you watch the opening cutscene, once you start climbing the leaves on the walls, it absolutely feels like it. But only in the best ways. I will say it controls a little clunky and the devs could do away with that and only see improvement. But that comes with the territory, and if you have any nostalgia for the N64, you're not gonna mind. It never gets in the way of doing what you want to do. I never input something correctly and then got fucked because the game was clunky. It's just like, sometimes you go, oh hey, that animation takes a while. But the same could be said for Dark Souls, the ultimate game of all time, which is, it's definitely not too early to say. The game is essentially one classic Zelda dungeon. You unlock new weapons, fight progressively harder bosses, and explore areas full of hazards. There are some NPCs, a sneaking segment that I really adored, and environmental puzzles that are just difficult enough to enjoy figuring out, but simple enough that I never got stuck. This isn't a puzzle game like Portal, it's simple, but satisfying, and mostly a means of traversal. I like how the weapon you unlock after a sword isn't a bigger sword or a hammer, it's just boxing gloves. I like how the enemies laugh at you and say you're too weak to fight them before you find the sword instead of just kicking your ass while you're defenseless. I like that you can hover with your bee wings and how raindrops hurt you. I like how almost nothing is explained. The game doesn't hold your hand because it trusts you to solve a very basic idea sat in front of you. It's not hard. It's just a brain teaser. It does that great thing that old games did, where tutorials were optional signposts that most people ignored instead of mandatory cutscenes. The game, as it is just a free demo on itch.io. I don't know of any plans for producing a full game, but if it wasn't free, I would rank its value at around $6. I beat it in about an hour and a half, but I was entertained for the full 90 minutes. I've bought games for $5, played them for 2 hours, and I was entertained for less of half of that playtime. The ratio matters. Lastly, if you've never played Ocarina of Time or any N64 game like it, you might be aware that it's a pain in the ass to play Ocarina of Time in 2024. It's not a pain in the ass to play Benighted, and I'd recommend it. It's not a replacement, but it is a taste to know whether you think it would be worth the effort to getting a hold on that piece of ancient media. Play it or not, I don't care. Bye. And if you have any really underrated indie games, or shows, or whatever, that you think I should check out, just let me know. I love finding cool stuff. I love finding cool stuff for you. I love you. I love you so much. Just kidding, don't tell my wife I said that.
My lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing